Back for another edition of In the Huddle. Carl Dukes put them up along with my man Jason Canfora. And yes, guys, we are talking about the upcoming NFL season. We are in OTAs. We're about to be in mandatory minicamp for many of the teams around the league. And then it is training camp time. But we always like to give you previews, and that is something we're going to start today as we look at what I think, Jason, is the toughest division in the NFL. Jason Canfora, of course, Baldy, a part of this podcast as well. We do it each and every week, guys. Tuesdays, Thursdays, sometimes Fridays, depending on what's going on. So make sure you subscribe to In the Huddle Pod and check us out across all social media platforms. You can find us wherever you get your podcast. Jason Canfora, you are in a town that there are high expectations for the Baltimore Ravens. And This is a team that's won this division 3 of the last 6 years. They were 13-4 last year. Jason, we've talked about it, how they blew the AFC Championship game at home. But as we fast forward, let's talk about some of the changes before we get into the expectations for the Ravens in this division. Talk about some of the things they did, because you said in the offseason they needed to sign Metabuke. They did. They went out and re-signed Kyle Van Noy, but they lost a bunch of coaches along the way, Jason. How is that going to affect this Ravens team?
Yeah, I think, they're a really interesting case study because I don't believe in windows when you have a Lamar Jackson. Their window is every year that Lamar is healthy. But when you really look at opportunities to knock off what looks like it's going to be Midwest Foxborough, right, Kansas City, I don't know that too many better chances are going to come around than what they had last year. So can they mentally get beyond all that? Can they grow as a team? And can they collectively, as a coaching staff, sort of pick up where this other one left off? And I'm not sure that that's going to be the case, and I'm not sure that's even going to be fair. I mean, when you just start talking about people who left the building for them, and look, last year was historically significant defense. Like, they won a Triple Crown that had never been won before. Even the great Ravens defenses of the early 2000s never led the league in points allowed, takeaways, and sacks in the same season. It had never happened. The Ravens just did it. Jadeveon Clowney had the best season of his career. He's gone. Ronald Darby was without question their number 2 corner behind Brandon Stevens. He's gone. While Marcus Williams, their $16 million a year free safety, was out, this young man, Geno Stone, was leading the NFL in interceptions. Geno Stone is gone. They lost their defensive coordinator. They lost the guy coaching their secondary. They lost their D-line coach. Like, all those guys moved on to become either head coaches or coordinators elsewhere. That's a lot of brain drain. Patrick Queen, who became the ultimate Robin to Roquan Smith's Batman, Patrick Queen's gone. He went down the road in Pittsburgh, and he seems pretty intent on being public enemy number 1 in Baltimore and bringing some of the luster back to that rivalry, and talking some smack and having some fun. So, that's a lot of defections, and we've only touched one side of the ball. So, yeah, I think that this team is going to have its own learning curve, its own this season is not going to be like last year's, I don't believe, where, they're beating everybody 33-0 at halftime and they're the biggest bully on the block. Like, they might get there. Like, it could happen again. And, if they're peaking at the right time, that's all that matters. But, man, I think there's a lot to overcome. And offensively, I'm not really sold on their receiving core. There's a lot of questions about the offensive line. Like, they lost, their starting right tackle, Morgan Moses, who was a rock. They lost Kevin Zeitler, who's still one of the best guards in the league. Like, they've got open competitions at 3 of those 5 spots. And left tackle Ronnie Stanley took about a massive haircut to come back because he's on his last legs and he wasn't productive last year. So there's definitely questions about this group.
It's In the Huddle, guys. Carl Dukes, along with Jason Canfora, Brian Baldinger, part of this podcast as well. We're talking about, I think, the toughest division in football, and that's the AFC North. Ravens, Browns, Bengals, Steelers. We'll get to all of them. As we continue with the Ravens, and Jason, you said this, historical defense last year, they lost 3 games by a combined 16 points. So that tells you how good they were, and Jason just laid out to you how many guys they've lost. How do you replace all of that? Let me ask you this. What's the deal with the Derrick Henry signing? Because I'm under the impression like you're going to have to monitor and certainly play him at certain times. This isn't Derrick Henry 2018 where he's going to touch the rock 400 times, hypothetically. I mean, they've got to make sure he's healthy for the postseason, right?
Absolutely. It's a lot of money for a running back, and it's maybe in some ways it feels a little bit like the Odell Beckham signing at wide receiver the year before. Not as much money, but when you equate $15 million for a receiver, $9 million for a running back, both over the age of 30, it has a little bit of the same sort of air to me. Now, I think Derrick Henry could prove to be a whole lot more productive than Odell Beckham, and I certainly think he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot more than Odell Beckham did. But there's questions with this as well. This is not the offensive line he had in Tennessee 3-4 years ago where he's running for 2,000 yards. He's done his damage under center, old school, I formation. This team has been in shotgun or pistol more than any team in the NFL. He's coming from a team that was in it the least, that was doing the most under center. They're going to have to meet in the middle a little bit there. As great as he is, even when he was rewriting record books in Tennessee, he's never been a 3-down back. He's never been asked to do much on 3rd down. So, how much of that happens here? Running backs tend to hit the wall pretty hard. Like it's usually not a gradual decay over a couple of years. It's, I can remember guys like Sean Alexander, Larry Johnson going from bell cow, right? Clinton Portis going from dudes who won you football games to guys who were working out for other teams every Tuesday trying to get a job. Like, so we'll have to see. Derrick Henry stays in tremendous shape. There's no doubt about it. But there's going to be an adjustment period. And again, I'm really interested to see what this group looks like in front of him. So I think the Ravens are changing their spots. And last year, the first year under Todd Monk and the new offensive coordinator, it was all about how much can we get into 11 personnel? Can we win the way teams in the NFL are winning now with 3 wide receivers on the field, spreading people out? They tried it last year. They certainly were better at it than they had been in years past, but the personnel still isn't really there.
And that's not their identity, though, is it?
And and their season ended by them being too cute and not running the damn ball. So then you go out and you give Derrick Henry $9 million a year. I think they're going to run the damn ball. I think they're going to be in 12 and 13 personnel. Maybe not as much as they were under Greg Roman, but certainly more than they were last year. I think the key to unlocking this offense this year is, to your point, monitoring Derrick Henry's workload through the year so you have him available in the playoffs, and winning with Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews on the field at the same time. It's these guys have been good when the other one's been hurt, but they've never gotten a lot of production out of 12 and 13 personnel when both are healthy and available. And they've got to lean into that, because outside of Zay Flowers, I still don't really buy anybody in their receiving core, and even Zay Flowers has limitations with his size. So I think it's going to be about winning with heavy personnel, not just on the ground where we know they can do it, but being an elite passing team when the fullback Pat Ricard's on the field, when Derrick Henry's on the field, and both those tight ends are on the field.
They are projected to win 11.5 games, guys. The over-under. We're talking about the AFC North. It's Carl Dukes, Jason La Canfora, talking with you on In the Huddle. In the Huddle Pod on YouTube. You can check us out there as well. Here's the crazy thing, and then we're going to turn the page and talk about the Browns. The Ravens have only had one losing season since 2014. And that is something that gives, I think, Ravens fans a lot of confidence. They've got all these changes, but you say, hey, the one constant is what? Harbaugh. He's still there, and I'm with you. There is no window as when you have Lamar Jackson. Let's talk about the Browns, because this is a team that's been up and down. Jason, going back to 2019, 6-10. 2020, we know, COVID, 11-5. 21, 8-9. 22, 7-9. And then last year they were 11-6 without Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
So Nick Chubb is on the mend. He just said recently, I'm, where I need to be, but he's coming back. And then everybody's wondering, if Deshaun Watson can get the job done? Like, is he a shell of himself? Is this dude ever going to be what he was when he was with the Houston Texans and got that $250 million deal when he was traded to the Browns?
Yeah, I have real reservations about this team. And I really think in terms of who could win a division this good and this deep, I think there's 3 teams in the Browns. And I think the division might be decided by, somebody sweeps the Browns and somebody messes around and splits with the Browns, and that tiebreaker could end up being the difference, because I just don't buy the quarterback at all, Carl. I mean, you look at the sort of operation that they were until Flacco got there. It's totally different. I mean, their identity changed on the fly, and now part of it was also because of some of the injuries, especially Chubb. But like, for Flacco to walk in with the same basic personnel that Watson was playing with and turn it into a team that was bombs away first, second, third down, right? And for them to play that way and actually have it not be a detriment to the defense, but help the defense out. Like, I don't know, man. I think Jameis Winston's going to play a decent amount this year. And you know what? Jameis is he's like Flacco, man. It's going to be bombs away. And like, I think they're going to come to a point in their season where even if Watson is still relatively healthy, it's like, if we want to salvage the season, do we need to flip the switch? Do we need to see what's behind door number 2? Now, the owner's not going to want that to happen, and there'll be financial ramifications. But I don't see this team being I don't see them being able to compete for this division title. And defensively, there's a lot to like there, but when you only bring it at home, that's just weird to me. Like, when you can be historically significant at home and literally, get unmasked by, even at times middling quarterbacks. I don't know what that's all about. And I just frankly think that defense would have to really back it up again. Like, to me, that defense would have to play like it did last year at home and road, for them to be one of the last teams standing in the AFC. And I just don't buy that.
Yeah, listen, it's a great point. We know statistically at one point last year, the Browns were considered to be the number 1 defense early in the season, right? They were doing all the things. We know they got Miles. They got players on that side of the football. But I agree with you on this. And here's my deal. I've been supporting Deshaun from, the off-the-field stuff. He dealt with that, and it is what it is. But he just hasn't looked like the dude we saw coming into the league. And I don't know what the reasoning is. I don't know if it's footwork or technique or whatever, or if he's a little timid, to your point, where Flacco came in and said, screw it, I'm taking chances, which is what Joe does. And Deshaun is a little hesitant in doing that. The crazy thing for me is, their last playoff win was in 2020 with a guy named Baker Mayfield, who's now with the Buccaneers. And you go, all right, well, last year they get in, they got dismantled by the Texans. The Browns are a mystery. And here's the other part about the Browns, Jason. They extend Stefanski and Andrew Barry, their general manager. And I'm going, wait a minute. Why? Like, this should be a prove-it year, instead of extending him and potentially at the end of this season going, we may need to make a change.
Well, look, I think at the very least they're trying to sell continuity, which, I mean, frankly, look, Kevin Stefanski's done yeoman's work to last as long as he has there. Like
True.
This owner's been a clown. Like, let's just be real. I mean, he's run that thing like a clown show for the most part, straight up through the signing of Deshaun Watson, where the football people in that building were I would say, far more ambivalent, if not outright opposed to it, but it didn't matter. So I think for them to have done what they did with Flacco, I mean, for them to get in the playoffs, losing all the players they lost, including the quarterback that the owner had picked, I think there's something to be said for, their organizational flexibility and malleability. And I think Stefanski's a good coach.
Handed a bad hand, right? He's been dealt a bad hand.
I kind of like it, because it's like, hey, we know that we're not exactly competing for the Super Bowl, but you've also had to deal with some mitigating circumstances. I just don't know, though, man. I just have a hard time. I have a hard time buying them. Like, if the Browns were in the NFC, I think I could sell myself on them. Like, if the Browns were in the NFC East, I might be saying, hey, I'd put some money on them to win that division. Like, I just would fancy their chances a little more. But to me, Deshaun Watson was already kind of shaken and shattered. And then for him to watch what happened last year, which is like guys' careers were transformed when this other dude started throwing the ball. Like David Njoku went from when's he ever going to put it all together to like,
all pro.
He might go for 200 yards again this week. Like, oh, they're playing the Jets, good defense. Doesn't matter. Like, you saw, like, you know, Elijah Moore, like, you just saw, like, the light bulb turn on for all these guys. And, like, I don't know. And then they run, and then they, like, want to start running offensive coaches and quarterback coaches out of the building. Like, I'm thinking, who's behind that? Like, who was threatened by that? Probably the, you know, $60 million quarterback. So I don't know, man. I just don't know that the pieces are going to fit there the way they think the pieces are going to fit. And also that offensive line is really, you know, there's been some attrition there over the years, and I'm going to be interested to see how stout that group is. Chubb coming back from injury. He's going to want to show the world it doesn't matter. But, man, the first year back is usually pretty tough, especially for running backs. I just don't feel it.
Well, I don't either. And the Browns are a team last year that went 3-3 in the division. Ironically, when Watson is healthy, he's 5-1. When he's played in the division, that's crazy, right? But he's been hurt, and so we'll see. I think, you know, this is one of the reasons why the Browns, for me, are a big question mark right now. We're talking about the AFC North. It is In the Huddle. Subscribe, listen to In the Huddle pod, guys, on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcast. Let's shift gears and talk about the Steelers, because I think this is one of the most intriguing off seasons for them in a very, very long time. The Steelers last year, ironically, were 5-1. They swept the Ravens and the Browns, or the Bengals, should I say, and split with the Browns. Here's the crazy thing, though. Mike Tomlin, Jason, was playing This were the quarterbacks they were facing, right? Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Tyler Huntley, Jake Browning. And you would think they would have done what they did in the division. Like, it's almost as if it set itself up, even though they had terrible quarterback play and they've moved on from that guy. But now they've got two guys, and I'm wondering, like, is this truly Russell Wilson's job, or is this going to be Justin Fields? Everybody just assumes it's Russ.
I think Justin Fields is going to show, and maybe show pretty quickly, that there's just a level a more dynamic high notes that he can hit with that offense, and the dual threat, I just think is going to carry the day, especially the way they built the thing up on defense. And they've been through all this. Like, I mean, I just look at where Russ is at this stage of his career, and he's throwing a lot of checkdowns. He's not airing it out like he used to. Like, it's like late stage Ben Roethlisberger. Like, I feel like they've been in this quarterback purgatory for 5 or 6 years now. And I just think the chance to run people over, to win with multiplicity in the run game, and couple that with Justin Fields, who does like to hit play action. When you boot him out, when you move the pocket, and then you give him a chance to expand the ball down the field, I just think there's something to that. So we'll see. Everybody will tell you Russ. You know, you talk to people who cover the team. Russ. I'm not told. I, in the past, have been a big Russ guy. Like, they've been looking at Justin Fields for a long time. And maybe it starts out as a two-headed monster, but I think that's a team that needs to win time of possession. That's a team that needs to win field position. That defense has been hung out to dry enough. And I don't know, man. I'm pretty bullish on the Steelers. They're going to add a receiver at some point between now and the trade deadline. Like, that's going to happen. They budgeted for it. They've been trying to make it happen. I'd be stunned if it doesn't. You look at Lamar Jackson does not fare well against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, Joe Burrow's got like a career 84 passer rating against, but like, those guys struggle with this defense. When TJ Watt's on the field, they win like 75% of their regular season games. Can Hayward give them one more run? Can Watt stay relatively healthy?
Do you think they're going to pay Hayward, by the way? Because that's a big question mark right now.
I don't know. I think they could probably find a way to figure something out there, at least to appease him, to get him through this season. My questions with them on defense are on the back end a little bit, which I feel like they've been trying to sort out forever. But man, if they're not playing from behind, if they're playing bully ball with the three-headed monster running the ball, with Fields and Warren and Harris, I think the offensive line is going to be a lot better. I just think it's going to become pretty clear to them at some point, by October, that, hey, if we play a certain way with Justin Fields,
right,
it might be ugly, but we're going to win.
Yeah, and here's the thing, too. I mean, their new offensive coordinator is Arthur Smith. He was the head coach of the Falcons. I've said this, and Jason, we've been covering the league a long time. Guys who get another chance, regardless if it's head coach or coordinator, you get back into it. You know the mistakes you made, right? And part of that was personnel here, and then you get there. And I agree with you. Listen, there's no doubt Mike Tomlin's like, look, here's what I want. We're going to run the ball. We're going to be ball control, right? We're going to time of possession. You do those things with the stuff you're describing with that quarterback. I don't know if you do those things with Russ. And by the way, there is not going to be any of this Russ cooking stuff that we've heard in the last couple of years in Denver.
No.
He got the money there. He had the power, and he wanted all the clout. And then, when Sean Payton came in, he was like, this is not going down. I think the makeup of what the Steelers like to do and how they do business is completely different. And I agree with you. I think everybody's talking about Russ, and maybe it looks that way in the preseason or whatever. But even if it's a slash type role, big shout out to Cordell Stewart, that's maybe how they incorporate, right, Justin into this thing early. And then, like you said, maybe it just takes off.
Yeah, I like this football team. I like this head coach a whole lot. I think they've upgraded at quarterback. I think they've upgraded at offensive coordinator. I think they've upgraded at the O-line as a collective will be better. And yeah, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for me, honestly, that they win this division, and they win this division by going by throwing it back to 1985.
All right. One last thing on the Steelers, and then we're going to talk about the Bengals. It's in the huddle. By the way, we are live on Twitter, X. I don't call it that, but nevertheless, we will be more live, or more. We will be going live, should I say, more on this platform. So if you are checking us out for the first time, enjoying it, or you want to subscribe, we talk football, guys. It's all NFL through the course of the season. We have guests and various things that are going on. We talk betting, lots of betting, because it's a big part of what happens in the NFL. So make sure you check us out. You can follow us as well. Jason Canfora, Brian Baldinger. I'm Carl Dukes. So make sure you check us out. All right, one last thing I wanted to mention about the Steelers, and that is the fact that they were in this division. I said this already, 5-1, and everybody thinks that, they're going to be back in the playoffs. Remember, 3 teams in this division won double-digit games last year. The Bengals won 9. So you almost, without Joe Burrow, had 4 teams that had double-digit wins. That's how good this division is. All right, let's talk about the Bengals and where they're at. T. Higgins was complaining. Trey Hendrickson was saying, I want out. We know Burrow is on the mend. I think more than anything, it's just about getting him back and healthy and being on the field. But, Jason, here's my thing about Burrow, and I love the guy. Is he durable? Is he an injury-prone quarterback now as we start watching this? This isn't year 1 anymore. We're starting to see a trend, right? And some of this stuff isn't his fault, but it's affected his career and certainly the outcomes of games and how his team has played.
Just listening to him talk this offseason, watching pretty closely, I wonder if there is becoming a level of mental fatigue with him to like having his body literally cut open like every 9 to 18 months. Like it does something to you. And then we were talking about it on my show in Baltimore, and like my producer's going back and all the way to high school. This kid's had like 6 procedures. Like I don't know that he's ever gone since he's like 17, 18 years old, even a couple of years without having to get a screw put in his body. Like he's being cut open all the time. Like it's starting to feel Andrew lucky a little bit, and maybe Andrew unlucky is the better way to put it. Like where there just becomes this sort of thought that like, man, they're going to put me under and cut me open, and I'm going to have another 6 or 8 or 12 or 16 or longer recovery where I'm trying to get my body back again. And they're going to have to build in more buffer days, more off days. Like is he a guy who, even though he's only 5 years into his career, like is he getting Wednesdays off? You know what I mean? Like veteran Wednesdays, like. Because the body, I think, is a little older and he got beat up so much that first season where we were sitting here on the show almost like, when is the kill shot coming? Because it looked like the kill shot was coming. I don't know, Carl. Like, I don't know anything. I haven't asked anybody. It's just about me, having covered the league for a long time and just something in his voice and sort of the matter-of-fact way he was talking about, like, hey, my off seasons and my training camps aren't ever going to be like, it's different now. Like, we've got to start accounting for some things. I'm like, man, I totally, and this is not a commentary on his toughness whatsoever. It's that this guy's a human being. And if you really go back and chronicle his medical history since high school, it's been a lot. So, and then you've got, the mouths that want to be fed, that at least a couple of them know it's never happening here. Like it might happen for me somewhere, like some other billionaire might give me everything I want, but probably not, this ma and pa shop. So how does that all play out? How does Zach Taylor navigate all of that? It's going to be interesting. And the defense is just, they're going to have to be markedly better on defense. They're going to have to be more consistent. Like that side of things kind of fell apart a little bit last year. Like, what do they have on the back end? Is this now, Dax Hill's got another role. Like, what's that going to look like? Can they get the pass rush out of Hendrickson? And I even the offensive line, like, they patched some things up last year, but like, what are they going to get out of Orlando Brown? To me, it's a real feast or famine team. And if they navigate the summer the right way with Burrow and he's actually good, like he's physically and mentally and all the way good week one, which we've never seen really, right? Since his rookie year, he's always coming back from something. He's always dealing with something. Then, September's been their bugaboo. So maybe they cure some things. But I do think it's a team that probably could use a little bit of a fast start. And you could tell me that they go to Arrowhead in January and beat Patrick Mahomes again and go back to the Super Bowl, and I would say I'd buy that. And you could also tell me that they have a slow start and there's some malcontents in the locker room, and Burrow's beat up again and they missed the playoffs, and I could say, well, I could probably see that too.
It's to me one of the most intriguing teams to watch. To your point, getting into October, late October, and seeing where they are and who's available. They went 1-5 in the division, by the way, as we talk about the AFC North. 0-3 with Burrow. He gets hurt, and they go 1-2. So they were 0-5 in the division and beat Cleveland, basically, right? At the end of the year, I think it was like week 18. It was meaningless. Cleveland knew they were going to playoffs. The Bengals are like, we got to win. So my deal is consistency with this team. If you're a Bengals fan and you're going, hey, we got Burrow and he's coming back, that's great. Consistency. The problem has been, as we talked about, whether it was Jake Browning at quarterback, who's quarterbacking, number one. Number two, the consistency that you need to be great year in and year out. The high mark, right, is the Chiefs. You see it. Regardless of personnel, regardless of what's going on, consistency. But part of that is because Mahomes has been healthy. He's not taking those sacks, Jason. He's not taking a beating like Burrow. So you're allowed, or he's been allowed to do what Burrow hasn't been able to because of the health concerns. And that's why, to me, it's the number one thing. I don't care what it takes. Sometimes you got to max protect, in these situations. I'm not taking any chances with his health, knowing how important he is to the overall outcome of our season. All right, with that said, Ravens, we mentioned this. 3 of the last 6 years, they've won this division. Browns, Bengals, Steelers. It is way early, guys, and we have a lot of previewing to do here on In the Huddle. But as we do this and we start to look ahead to training camp, because that's going to be the next big thing. Mandatory mini camps next week for a lot of teams, as we mentioned. But, Jason, I know you may not be in the same corner with me, but I still like the Ravens, and I even like the Steelers over the Browns and the Bengals. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Now, again, they may add a couple of pieces. Where are you at on this when we talk about the AFC North?
Yeah, I think it could be those two at the top as well. I give the Steelers more than a puncher's chance of winning this division. I really do. I just think I could see there being sort of this, if they get stable quarterback play and if they unlock the ground game the way I really think they could, if they lean into Justin Fields and lean into him early enough in the season that they still have 12, 13, 14 games to really hone that thing. If they don't wait until it's too late or wait until, Russ gets hurt throwing a screen pass in week 10 or whatever, I think they can close the margins, and I think they can become a team that went from you don't really have to worry about them offensively to a team that's running with such multiplicity and getting, all these athletes in that backfield at the same time. If Arthur Smith really gets in his bag and cooks it up, and they're running stuff out of the backfield with Fields and Warren and Harris on the field at the same time, with some of the twitchy guys they have at receiver, with strong tight ends. I don't know, man. I think they could become pretty tough to defend.
Before we get out of here, there is no real financial commitment to either one of these guys when we talk about the Steelers. So unlike a lot of camps where you say, oh, it's a competition, it literally is, because you're not paying one or the other $50 million. So if one guy outplays another, you can truly start that guy or play him with really no financial consequences to say I'm sitting a guy on the bench for $40 million. That is the case in a lot of other situations. Jason, I'm totally with you. Can't wait to see how this plays out. Obviously, we got a long way to go. We'll continue previewing, going around the league, guys. Thanks for being here. We'll be live back on Twitter here next week. All right, so make sure you're here. Brian Baldinger, part of this podcast. Jason Canfora, I'm Carl Dukes. Everybody, have a great day. Thanks for being here.